What's up, everyone? Alex Boylan here, co-founder of Dream Jobbing. Super excited to have Mark T. Williams here to do 5 questions with. He is one of the most sought-after composers. His company, Atu Music, is amazing. When you hear music on hit shows like Shark Tank, Master Chef, Biggest Loser, that's music is coming from Atu in the brain of Mark. So thank you for doing 5 questions with.
Oh, my pleasure.
Super excited about this because we have a lot of students that are really interested in music, right? And how to get into this world. So I'm excited to dive into and figure out how you got to where you got to in your career.
All right.
Yeah, so I guess the first question is, where did your passion for music begin?
Yeah, well, that is a great question. I was 5 years old. I wanted to play the trumpet. And so my dad, all of a sudden, 2 years later, showed up after I kept asking. They were like, hey, maybe he's actually for real. He really wants to play. But a 5-year-old kid playing the trumpet is kind of weird, right?
Uh-huh.
It's not typical. So he showed up on my birthday and had a brown paper bag with a beat-up trumpet. And I was so excited. I mean, I just thought, like, this is the greatest thing, in the world. And so I ended up taking trumpet lessons. And, along the way, my mom was very much encouraging me to take piano lessons because she said, if you really want to hone, your skills as a musician, you should play the piano. She was a piano player, incidentally.
Yeah.
And I was just, Mom, that's for girls. I don't want to do that. And my sister, though, had a friend in high school, and this is, in an era where the DX7, which was a big major flagship synthesizer that Yamaha put out, came out, and I saw this thing, and I was like, man, that is cool, and I was so fascinated by all the sounds it made and everything. So that sort of, I guess, spawned that desire in me to actually want to have some keyboard skills. And so if I'm going to be great at playing like a synthesizer or keyboard, then I need to take piano lessons. So then I ended up going back to my mom, and she said, sure, we'll sign you up. I didn't start piano until I was 12, though, actually, but it became actually my principal instrument that I studied through college, and is absolutely by far I believe, greatest instrument that a composer should have skills in. Yeah. I mean, there are some wonderful composers who have other principal instruments, but for me, it's just working out harmony, working out all different, type of options with a keyboard. It's really possible.
So, I mean, it's awesome. 5 years old, you're starting, you find your passion. You're like, I love music. When was it that you're like, oh, wow, I can make a living doing this?
Well,
when did that trigger hit?
Well, I think along that, timeline of being interested in synthesizers and all that, I found there was a magazine called Keyboard Magazine, which is a publication that featured all of these, keyboard interviews from people playing in bands or people that were film and TV composers, and I started reading it, and I just started absorbing the information, going like, man, well, I could be one of these guys maybe one day.
Yeah.
Maybe if I try hard enough, I can get there. And I started just becoming very fascinated. I started noticing soundtracks, and I started paying attention as a kid, saying, oh, wow, it's really cool. Started listening to different composers' work, started paying attention to the soundtracks on whether it was a TV series or a film. And so it all started around the same time, and I just wanted to pursue it. Didn't know how I would get there at that point. But.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So can you walk us through, what's a day in the life of Mark T. Williams? I mean, you hear all these, the music is incredible. You watch your shows. So what's a day like for you? What's a day in the life for a music composer?
Well, once I get to the studio, it's pretty much, if we're in the middle of a production, there's a lot of composing. There's a lot of writing because of the projects we've worked on are pretty music intense, so there's a high level of production happening here with our team. So it's not just myself, and Jeff is busy writing, I'm busy writing, and Jeff Lippincott, who's an amazing composer, when we formed this company, we knew we better bring in people that, that we want to be around, that can support what we're doing. And so really we're grinding, we're working hard on the music aspect of it.
So does the episode come into you? So you're watching a rough cut? Are you watching a final lock? What does it look like when?
Yeah, I mean, the process for us varies project by project. It typically is a creative conversation, meeting with the creative minds that have started the projects and are carrying them and seeing them through. And we're sitting down and coming up with, this is going to be the direction, this is going to be the sound. And we sort of try to hone in a direction initially, before we start composing, and from there we start our production process where we're getting either rough cuts, like you mentioned, or we're getting final locked cuts, and a lot of times we're starting with the main theme, ideally,
Yeah.
and then we're kind of building off of that so we can really create and stylize, a show.
Very cool. Very fascinating. So let's just say for the students out there, the younger people that are like, man, I want to work. I want this to be my dream job, right? I want to be sitting here. Like, what's the advice or tangible tips you can give them of saying, you should do X, Y, and Z. Do this, and you're going to be setting yourself up for success in this business.
Okay, great question. Well, I think first of all, you have to be skilled, and second of all, you have to be nice.
I like that. Be nice. Be nice.
So it's pretty basic. Skill and be nice. So, and nobody wants to work around grumpy people, and grumpy people typically are not kept on season after season. And you want to be a person that people would like to work with. And I think you could relate to that in all the projects you've produced and worked on.
Yeah, we say it a lot of times, like, you're married to your work a lot of times in the entertainment business. And so the people that are around you, it's important that you get along.
Yeah. So I think that's critically important to develop your communication and your relational skills, because we work in a very relational business. So being able to build relationships, being able to not only build them, but have a sustainable relationship where there's a trust factor is critically important. And the skill portion is going to really be driven both by two parts. One is the innate ability to compose music. If you're going to compose or produce music, you have to have this innate music in you. You can't give that to somebody, and you can't teach that. So you could take composition classes all day long, but it doesn't mean you're going to be a good composer. Just like you could take any particular class in anything, and you may not just have a mind or the ability as much, or the aptitude, but let's just say that you do have that music in you, and you do have these melodies going through your head, and you do sit down and you start playing around even without any training. Then that's a great place to start, and from there you build. Like I mentioned earlier, take piano lessons, take different music lessons, study under different teachers.
You were mentioning earlier that when you were in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't have any contacts. You were in LA, right?
Right.
Talk a little bit about that, because you said you used to sit in, right?
Yeah.
You used to sit in with other composers that were older.
Yeah. So sitting in was something that I realized quickly growing up where I grew up. It's like, well, I have to figure this out. I'm reading these interviews and all of this. These people are in LA. I'm here on the East Coast. And I started figuring out, well, who's who here? And I was able to go sit in different studios, different composers, hang out and learn sitting in with them. And in fact, I did that all the way as a kid through high school. And then also when I went to college, I took an internship, 2.5 years. For the most part, I paid. And for me, though, that's the time in your life, when you have the time and you have the ability and you can live really lean. You don't have all this responsibility on you to take those risks. And if you take those risks when you're young, it really makes it a lot easier to spring off of rather than a springboard when you're, it just gets harder as you get older,
Yeah.
because I have different friends that can attest to that, So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we're always a big supporter of find your dream career at any point in time in your life. But for the younger kids, the emphasis on that, I think there's nothing like the fact adults want to help younger kids out. So while you are a student and you're passionate, the fact that it doesn't matter where you live, Indiana, Florida, or Los Angeles, there's going to be composers in your area.
Yes.
Find them and tell them you're passionate about it. And you never know, because as soon as you can get in there, then you start seeing how it works. You're starting to build relationships. And, who knows, maybe you'll be working at A2 Music.
That's right, absolutely.
Okay, final question. This question comes from Chris. He's 17 years old. He's with the Boys and Girls Club in Venice. And his question to you is, what was your most challenging project and why?
Okay. I think of one immediately. It's called On the Lot. It was a series for Fox. And the most interesting part about this is that you had two major moguls that were executive producing the show. You had Mark Burnett, right, an amazing producer, and then you had Steven Spielberg, right? So iconic feature film director.
Two pretty big people.
And so, Jeff and I were called in, and after many rounds of discussion and different themes, one got recorded and then had to be re-recorded. Even with a big live orchestra too. I mean, it was like, there was a lot on the line. And Jeff had composed this amazing theme for the show, and Steven Spielberg reacted, this way, and Mark had, input, and we're just making sure, here at the studio, we're like, well, how do we make them both? We want everybody to be happy.
Right, yeah.
At the end of the day, everybody was pleased, and it was a pleasure working with both those gentlemen. It's just an amazing experience. So for us, I think, career-wise, there was both a career highlight and also a career challenge, which is what you want to be challenged,
Yeah.
You want to be put in those situations where it's like, wow, we have to, make
Step
sure everybody's happy
yeah.
to step it up.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah,
That's
absolutely.
awesome. Wow, what a story. Mark, thank you for doing 5 questions with. I
absolutely.
appreciate it, everyone. We'll see you next time. Cheers, guys.